What's up? What's up, YouTube? Reno here. Do a little housekeeping first. I'm smoking my Boswell Jumbo. And I am smoking some Boswell Christmas cookie in it. You know, because 'tis the season. So get this lit real quick and we'll start the show. So, making this video for one reason today, and that's to talk about The Hobbit, as I like to do. But the new movie came out Friday, so I wanted to give you guys my review on it. First off, it starts kind of like a bullet out of a gun, just right away, just action. Which makes sense, because, you know, the second movie, it's starting in the middle of the story, so obviously they're picking up where they left off. So when it starts, you have the hobbits, the dwarves, and Gandalf and Bilbo. They're still running from the orcs, because if you remember, the last scene in the first movie was them kind of on the cliff, and the eagles end up rescuing them, but the orcs are still after them. So they kind of need to find a place to hide and rest in order to get away from the orcs for a while. So they end up, Gandalf suggests that they end up going to this shapeshifter's house name. I know I'm not going to pronounce it right. It's like Baron or Baron, something like that. But he can change into the huge grizzly bear, and he's also, well, he's a man, but he can shapeshift into a huge grizzly bear. And so they go to his house, and actually the bear is chasing them, and they get away from him by going into his house. But I guess when he's in bear form, he's not really, he can't really think like a man, so he's more of a beast. So they kind of hide out in there and sleep. And eventually, Baron comes back and shifts back into a man, and during breakfast, they're all kind of discussing their plans, and he decides to help them because he doesn't really like dwarves, but he hates orcs more than dwarves, so anything he can do to make orcs' lives harder, he's going to do it. So he gives them, their supplies or whatever, some ponies to ride, and they head off to Mirkwood. In the book, my favorite part, of The Hobbit is their journey through Mirkwood and their fight with the spiders and all the stuff with, getting captured by the elves and all that. Which I thought they pulled off, they did well in the movie. And the only problem I had with it was their journey through the woods. It was kind of short. I know they were trying to get to, the action, which is the fight with the spiders, but, it was probably 5-10 minutes long at the most, where they're, walking through the woods and trying to find the path and all that. And I get why they did that, but I'm hoping in the extended version they add a little more to it. Same with their stay at Baron's house, because that was really short too. So eventually they get captured by the spiders, and famously Bilbo rescues them and names his sword Sting at that point, because one of the spiders, after Bilbo stabs the spider with his sword, he's like, it stings, or whatever. And so he's like, oh, Sting, that's a good name. So then they get away from the spiders, but eventually they get captured by the elves. And that's when we get reintroduced to Legolas, which when I first heard that he was going to be in the movie, Orlando Bloom, we are bringing back the character of Legolas, I was a little bit irritated because Legolas isn't in The Hobbit, and I know it's more or less just fan service putting him in the movie. But he is the wood elf, the king. He's the king's son, so I mean it makes sense that he would be there. But Tolkien didn't write him into the book. He was only in Lord of the Rings. But that aside, I mean, I did like his performance, and I thought, it did add to the movie. And then the whole addition of Evangeline Lilly's character, was her name Tamaril, something like that. That I think irritated me the most because I feel like they kind of just put her in to have some sort of like half-assed love story. But luckily, that wasn't really the focus of the film. Unlike Lord of the Rings, the whole love story between Aragon and what's her face? Yeah, I'm so bad with names. The elf princess. That whole thing was like not the center point, but a big part of those movies, and it was a very small part of the actual books. I mean, it was in there, but it wasn't, as prevalent. It was just kind of like, oh, they mention it every once in a while. Like, yeah, he has a thing for this elf princess, and they kind of have this relationship or whatever. So, what was my point? Oh yeah, so they put that in the Hobbit, I think, because Legolas kind of has a thing for Tamriel. I don't know, I'm butchering the name, so I apologize, but whatever. But again, that wasn't a major part of the movie, so it actually worked out okay. Feely actually ends up having a thing for her as well, and they kind of, I think, have more of a connection than Legolas and herself do. So they capture the dwarves. Obviously the Elven King questions, Thorin on what he's doing and where is he going, and I think he kind of guesses on his own like what their plan is to go back and kill Smaug and take back Erebor. And so actually the Elf King wants to help him because he wants some of the jewels and the gold that are in Erebor, and he figures, well, if I offer him my help, then you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, kind of thing. But Thorin is still pissed that the Elf King kind of left them high and dry when Smaug first attacked and didn't help them at all. So he kind of tells him to blow it out his ass in Dwarvish. And so they're stuck in the Elf's dungeons. But Bilbo didn't get captured, obviously, because he had the ring and he kind of snuck away. So he ends up rescuing them and setting them free. And then they go through to one of my other favorite scenes from the book. It was riding the burrows down the river. And as much as I liked that in the book, I loved it in the movie. Like, it was seriously like a roller coaster. Like, you're sitting on like a roaring rapids and with 3D glasses on and all this crazy shit's happening around you. Like, I was actually, at certain parts of it, I don't know if it was because I was smiling so big or if I was because I was laughing because it was so cool. But I was like, actually had tears going down my eyes. So that was a really cool scene. So as they're going down the river, the orcs are still chasing them, which also isn't in the book. I mean, the orcs are in the book, but they're not as big they don't play a bigger role. I think they had them chasing the dwarves to add a sense of urgency to their quest. But anyway, so they're fighting, as they're in the barrels, they're fighting the orcs, and then the elves end up coming and also fighting the orcs. And eventually, actually, kind of Legolas and Tamriel actually help the dwarves escape. I don't know if it was on purpose or that's just kind of the way it happened, but they end up getting away. And I was going to say, the Elf King, I really liked his performance. He comes off as a real douchebag. But it just works. Like, the elves kind of seem, they're a little weird in The Hobbit, especially the wood elves. They're not as ethereal and, godlike as they are in Lord of the Rings. They're more kind of quirky. And I think the way they portrayed the wood elves in the movie, that's how, they came across that way. And the wood elves especially are real kind of stingy and They don't really like to meddle in the affairs of everyone else. They just kind of want to stay in their little fortress and, make money and live out their lives. They're not like, Elrond and Rivendell elves, where, they kind of are concerned and they help people. Anyway, back to the story. So they end up crashing on the shore of, well, it's just kind of out in the wilderness, but the character Bard is there, and he's a human from Lake Town. And so they end up convincing him to kind of smuggle them into Lake Town and get some supplies for them so they can continue their quest to Erebor. And there's this whole thing that goes on in Lake Town with the master of Lake Town doesn't like Bard, and he's trying to, I don't know, imprison him for some reason. So eventually they end up leaving Lake Town. The master decides to help them because obviously he wants to get some gold. So he gives them their blessing. And Bard's against them going to the Lonely Mountain because he doesn't want them to wake the dragon, because he remembers the stories, like what the dragon did to Dale and the destruction it caused. And, he has kids, so he's worried about them. So they continue their quest. They get to the mountain eventually on Durin's Day, which is the last. We'll have to get there on Durin's Day before the sun sets, so they can see the keyhole to open the hidden door. So eventually they find the door. They're waiting as the sun sets, and it goes down, and they don't ever find the keyhole. So obviously they're all dejected and discouraged, and the dwarves end up kind of start walking down the mountain, and Thorin drops the key, oh, whatever, what's the point now? But Bilbo stays there, and he keeps looking, and eventually the moon comes out and shines on the keyhole, and they open it just in time. So Bilbo's whole job, the reason they got him to go on that mission, is to burgle. And the thing he needs to seal is the Arkenstone, and he has to do that because if Thorin can get the Arkenstone back, then he can bring that to his kin, like all the dwarves in the south or wherever they live, to kind of rally the armies to come and help them kill the dragon and take back Erebor. But they won't help him until he gets the Arkenstone. So their goal is for Bilbo to go in, get the Arkenstone without getting killed by the dragon, come out, and then they'll get the army to come and kill the dragon. But it doesn't really end up working like that. Bilbo goes in, and this is obviously the coolest scene in the movie because you finally get to see the dragon, the whole exchange with him and Bilbo. That was awesome in the book, and it was even better in the movie, I think. And so Bilbo's slinking around, the piles of gold looking for the Arkenstone. He's never seen it, so he doesn't really know what he's looking for. But Balin told him, you'll know it when you see it, because it's hard to miss. So eventually the dragon starts to wake up, and the scene's so great because Bilbo's walking around trying to be quiet, but he's walking on piles of gold, so obviously he's making noise. And every time he moves and makes a noise, Smaug kind of rustles and starts waking up, and he just stops. Red light, green light, that game we used to play when we were kids. And he has the funniest looks on his face, shit. So the dragon ends up waking up, and Bilbo slips on the ring right before he wakes up, so he disappears. But the dragon, I guess dragons are kind of like bloodhounds, and they have an incredible sense of smell. So the dragon knows he's there, but he's never smelt a hobbit before, so he's not sure who it is or what it is. So he's talking to Bilbo, looking for him. I know you're here, come out. I can smell you, and I can smell your ring, because dragons obviously have an affinity for gold. So much so that they know when somebody's holding a gold ring. But so they end up having this exchange, where Bilbo's complimenting him and kind of catering to his ego so he doesn't get burned alive. And I guess with Smaug, that works, and he's letting him live long enough to have a chat. But dude, the dragon just looks awesome, and that whole thing like makes me wish dragons were real. I mean, I do and I don't because that would be, very destructive. But it would be amazing to see. And so eventually Smaug realizes that he's working for the dwarves. And ends up trying to kill him, but Bilbo gets away. And him and Thorin kind of have this exchange where Thorin's like, "Did you get the Arkenstone?" And Bilbo doesn't. He's just like, "Well, let's go. We can talk about it later because the dragon's there still." And Thorin's like, basically, he's starting to get the sickness that his grandfather had, where the love of gold and greed kind of overshadows everything else. And so he's like, pointing a sword at him. He's like, "No, give me the Arkenstone, or did you find it, or what's going on?" And right then the dragon kind of finds them, and shit hits the fan. So there's this whole like chase with the dwarves and the dragon and fire and brimstone and falling from like cliffs and grabbing things, and yeah, it's just crazy. It's the whole movie was like a roller coaster, but like it never let up. Like there were little short breaks here and there, but it's just crazy, man. Like it really, to me, it diminishes Lord of the Rings a lot, because I love those movies and I think Peter Jackson did a great job. But the technology has advanced so much that if they were to remake those movies now, they would look way different. You might say better. Maybe if you like the more classical look. I mean, not that it was like dated, and the movie's not like 20 years old, but still, you can tell the CGI has come a long way. And I don't know, just it was crazy. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was better than the first movie, and I loved the first movie, as I've told you. I plan on seeing it at least one more time in the theater before it's gone. But it obviously ends on a cliffhanger because there's a third movie coming next year. I guess I've already given away everything else, so might as well tell you how it ends. So Smaug eventually realizes that the Lake Town people helped them, the dwarves, and so he's, angered by that, and so he decides to go burn Lake Town to the ground. So it ends with him flying towards Lake Town and saying that, I think his line is something like, "I am fire, like I am death." And it just shows his face, and then credits. It's funny because in the theater you hear everybody just go, "Ah!" right when it ends. It's like we have to wait another year now to have a resolution. When I first heard they were going to make it into 3 movies, I was like, why? Like, they could do that in 2 movies easy. But now that I've seen both movies, and, like, they've cut out, like, a significant amount of stuff. Maybe not, like, they didn't cut out whole scenes, but they definitely shortened certain things. Like, Mirkwood, the stay at Baron's house. Different things, like, they've shortened. So, the fact that they've made it shorter already, and they still have all this stuff that they need to put in, like 3 movies, like I think they could maybe even do it in 4. But so in retrospect, I think I'm glad that they're making it in 3 movies, because now I have another movie to look forward to. And they could have made it, 2 movies and cut out a lot of stuff. I mean, they did add things to the first movie that weren't even in the first movie, but whatever. I enjoy it. I think they're awesome. Only time will tell if I end up liking this trilogy better than Lord of the Rings, but so far, it's really good. And I also like that this movie wasn't as... I don't feel like it catered to kids as much as the first one did, because there was a lot of things in there, like with the trolls and the whole everything with the Radagast. Like, I felt like that was more for children. It was kind of like, hokey and slapsticky. But this one was definitely more... I don't want to say more geared towards adults, but it didn't have all that kind of slapstick humor in it, which I felt improved it. So that's gonna be it. I know I just rambled a bunch, and hopefully you enjoyed it. So if you haven't seen The Hobbit, or if you weren't planning to, go see it. Especially if you've seen the first one. I mean, go see the second one. What are you waiting for? Well, I hope you guys have a good day, and talk to you here again soon. I probably won't make another video till after Christmas. So this will be my Christmas video. Alright, bye.